We're on.
Wednesday night, November 25th, 2020. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving Day, and there are people that, for some reason or another, are opposed to Thanksgiving, most of the time coming from the approach of it's a holiday of Goyim, and it's forbidden to do anything that mimics Goyim. Now, obviously, our Sephardic Hachamim did not deal with Thanksgiving. We don't have any teshubot from them dealing specifically with Thanksgiving or with eating turkey or anything like that. Obviously it's an American issue that the Sephardim that were here early on, the Spanish Portuguese Sephardim, embraced it. They had no problem with it. They didn't write against it. Later Sephardim that came here, meaning Sephardim from the former Ottoman Empire, from Syria, from the Middle East, what have you, they also had no problem with it. They embraced it. So it's really something that comes from the Ashkenazi world, which always had a problem, or not always, but in light of the reform movement and the changes in Europe, everything became questionable. And, what's this holiday now? How can we do it? Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? Is it mutar? Is it asur? What's going on? So I started looking into the topic of Huqqot Hagoyim lo telechu. And it's a topic that we touched upon in classes going back the last decade or so. And there are always other aspects to it. The greatest Sephardic Hacham that dealt with the topic is Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazzan. And the first teshubah in his Kerach Shel Romi is probably one of the most famous teshubot, if not the most famous teshubah on the topic, where he really lets loose and he shows how it's very, very important, to understand what are the guidelines and what are the parameters of this halacha and what falls into it and not into it. But we even see into our more recent days, Chacham Ovadia Yosef, when he deals with this topic, he also is pretty much lenient in the typical style of the Sephardic Hachamim, knowing what is allowed, what's not allowed, and what we can do and not do. So the topic that was presented to him and he deals with in Bia Omer early on is cemeteries and placing flowers on gravestones and things like that. Things that are foreign to us, things that we're not used to seeing, but in Israel have become commonplace. And he shows how it's mutar. But since I wanted to really deal with the topic of tefillah, I want to look at the teshubah from Rabbi Yosef Mesas, but it's not on the tefillah itself. It has to do with the dress of the Hazzanim. When Hazzanim change their attire to look like priests, would such a thing be mutar? Would it be asur? Does it fall into the realm of Huqqot Hagoyim lo telechu? Okay, I believe we've never done this topic before. Give me a minute. I'll send a PDF of this and we can start the class.
So what's the topic tonight? Dressing like a priest?
The topic is Hazzan dressing in black.
Oh,
that's the technical name of it. But imagine, Hazzan dressed in a black robe and a black, type of cantor's hat to pray. Is such a thing mutar? Is it asur? How have the Hachamim looked at it? And why did they look at it the way they did? David, and he'll be able to get it out to you.
You're on.
We're on. Everybody has it? Okay. So this is Rabbi Yosef Mesas from his Mayim Hayim, his book of Sheilot Shuvot. This was originally published in 1934. And here's the question. Labush shahor Hazzan, black clothing for a Hazzan. עוד שאלת ידידי על המנהג הפשוט בין חזני הזמן החדשים ללבוש בגבעות ומעילים שחורים בעומדם לשרת בבית תפילה בשבתות מועדים אם אין בזה שום סד איסור ומותר לעשות כמוהם או לא. The person who is asking the question asked about the modern custom that has crept up among Hazanim to wear a type of hat and a cloak that are all black when they stand to serve the congregation when they're praying, whether it's on Shabbat or on holidays, and whether this is mutar or asur to do such a thing. Teshuvah, da yedidi, כי מלבוש זה הוא מיוחד דווקא למשרתי הכנסייה הנוצרית ללבוש מלבושים שחורים בתמונה זאת דווקא כידוע. He opens up immediately saying that such clothing, such attire, and such a get-up is something that belongs within the realms of the Christian church. And those priests that officiate there, that's what they wear, and we know that from many pictures of them. ובהם ולא באחרים משרתים בבתי תפילתם לפני תמונות שטבע ערב המסוין עליהם סורת הנוצרי בולטת מכף רגל ועד ראש. And he goes, and this is the type of clothing that they wear, this and no other, while they have upon themselves or they're in front of a big image of a cross with Yeshu, Yemashemo, from head to toe upon this cross. ואותם תמונות יש בהם שמש עבודה זרה, כמו שכתב מרן באור החיים סימן קוף י"ג סעיף ח' וזה לשונו. He goes, and of course, such a hold on one second. All right, sorry about that delay. Something came up. I had to take care of it. Okay, so I was saying. So he says, ואותם תמונות יש בהם שמש עבודה זרה, כמו שכתב מרן באור החיים סימן ק"ג סעיף ח'. And this has a taste, a flavor of Abodah Zara, like Maran wrote. And this is what Maran says.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I just sent you a WhatsApp picture. I just stored a Chametz Ra'atiyah. Go take a look, and there's a picture. And if you can see the rabbis there.
I'm very Solomon,
hat.
you think I'm not familiar with all these pictures you're going to send me?
Exactly.
Don't worry. We didn't get to anything yet. We didn't get to anything. We barely started at Teshuvah. You can't.
But it's a moot subject.
In your opinion, it's a moot subject. So just don't listen to the class then.
No, think about it.
No, it's not a moot subject.
Hachamim are wearing black with the black cloak and the black Hazzan hat type of hat.
First of all, what the Hachamim are wearing in the picture you sent are not what he's describing, in my opinion, from the pictures I know of. Okay, and these pictures that you sent me are very clear that this is not the same thing. Okay, that's number one. And Solomon, it's not the same thing. It's not a moot point. You have to see, to understand, you have to see how the Hachamim dealt with an issue, how they looked at it.
Really?
Okay? How they approached it, what they saw as positive, what they saw as negative. Okay, you can't just say, okay, here I have a picture of somebody, that makes it good enough for me and we're done. It doesn't work that way.
No, no, I understand that, but
No.
in my mind,
You know how much
it's the same
taxes were?
thing as that.
16
that
one way,
priest.
13 the other way.
No. It's not the same thing.
Except
definitely not
minus
the
the
same.
cross.
All right, let's read the Teshuvah. It's
Okay,
all of 2
continue.
pages. It's not the million pages here.
You got it.
Okay. Okay, so what does Maran say in Shulchan Aruch? המתפלל ובא כנגדו אדם ויש לו שטיב הערב בידו והגיע למקום ששוחין בו לא ישחה אף על פי שליבו לשמיים עד כאן לשונו עיין שם. So Maran is very clear. Somebody who's praying and somebody, okay, came towards him, okay, and this person who came towards him, yet he has a cross, okay, and he got to a point now where he has to bow in his Amidah, okay. Since a person with a cross is standing there, he should not bow. Lo yishheh, he doesn't bow, okay, even though his intentions are pure and he's thinking about Borei Olam, because that guy with the cross is there, he doesn't do it. Fine. והוא מהגהות עשירי סוף כמה דברachot. Okay, and this comes from הגהות עשירי, from the first section of ברachot, וזה לשונו. מי שמתפלל ובא עקום כנגדו ובידו דמות עבודת אלילים, אל ישתחווה במודים, אף על פי שליבו לשמיים, עד כאן לשונו. So we see the source for where Shulchan Aruch came from. וכן הוא הנוסח בכל הדפוסים. And in all the printings of Shulchan Aruch and of the Ashiri, we find it the same way. ואך מרן מלכה החליף ותנא תחת עקום אדם ותחת עבודת אלילים תנא שטיב הערב. להורות נתן שאף שהנוצרים של זמננו אין עובדים על עבודה זרה ונקראים בשם אדם מכל מקום אותו שטיב הערב עם הסורה שעליו יש בו שמש עבודה זרה. So this is a very interesting point that the Rabbi Yosef Mesas brings us. A number of Hachamim in the last century or so saw Christians as not being Obdei Abodah Zara, okay, not being Obdei Elilim, but rather monotheists. Even though there was this concept of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, they saw them as a form of monotheism, and therefore they're not the same as Christians of bygone years. And the problem that's over here is that if we look at the Ashiri is very, very careful to use the word akum and abodat ililim, okay? And in every printing of the Ashiri, we see it as abodat kochabim, or as akum rather, obdei kochabim umazalot, and abodat ililim. But when Maran came and he quoted him, he changed the language. He no longer said akum, he now says adam, a person. So now this Christian is no longer considered abodat obed kochabim umazalot, a worshiper of the sun and the moon and the stars. Rather, he is Adam. He is a human being just like me and you. And he changed the Abodat Elilim to Shetiva Ayrib, to the cross. So he no longer has an idol in his hand, but he has this cross. So even though there's a similarity, it's no longer the same. So that's why he's saying that, according to the way he reads Maran, it's now no longer Abodah Zara, but Shemis Abodah Zara, like, similar to Abodah Zara, but it's not really all there. Okay, so we already lowered it somewhat. The Christians of today do not worship Abodah Zara, and they're considered Adam, they're considered human beings, normal people like us. But this cross with the this crucifix with with Yeshu on it. Yesh bo shemes Abodah Zara. It's similar to Abodah Zara. Veheve kidmut Abodat Elidim, and it's similar to Abodat Elidim. Ve'asur l'sh'od lefanav, and it's forbidden to bow before it. Af al pi shelibo l'shamayim, even though your heart is to heaven. ועين عود بيريدعا سمان قوف ميم ألف سعيف ألف بهجها وعين سفتي كوهين شام سيف قتان فاب فتحيت شوبا شام سيف قتان ألف فاين بيمكن تمونات إلا هبجاديم بشحروتام هي ميوحدت لمشاريتاب شل الشتي وعيرب بصورته نسكرت للشريط اللي اشتحفوت لفناف بهم. And therefore this image of a person wearing these clothing, the black cloak and hat, it is considered something unique to those who serve this crucifix and the image that it presents, to bow down to it. And therefore, so far he's showing us that we don't wear such clothing. ועוד, כי אמונותם היא אמונת השלוש. And even though we know their faith is the faith of the Trinity, Ab ben Varuah, okay, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, or Spirit. כידוע, וגרסינם בירושלמי דשבת פרק ו' סוף הלכה ט' וזה לשונו, ברביעה דרביעה דמייל לבר אלוהים, אמר בראובן באותה שעה ירד מלאך וסתרו להוא רשיעה על פיו, אמר לה תקין מליך, ובר יתלה, חזר ואמר בריך לההון די שדרך משך ועבד נגו, די שלח ברי לית כתיב כאן, אלא די שלח מלאכי ושזיב לעבודוהי, די יתרחסיו עלוהי, עד כאן שנו עיין שם. So the Gemara Yerushalmi goes and quotes a section from Daniel. We're going to come back to it. ופירוש הגאון בעד פני משה, he explains what? באותה שעה שאמר דמי לבר אלוהים. Okay, when he said, who is to what he called the bar Elohim, sons of God, ירד המלאך וסתרו, ואמר לה תקין מילי. Okay, so basically the malach came out and he gave him a little whack, correct yourself. Vechi ben it leil Elohim. What do you mean? How can you say bar Elohim, sons of God? Does God have a son? Does God have children? Hazar ve'amar berich elahahon. Velo amar di shalach bere, illa di shalach mal'ache. No, I don't mean sons. Do you understand sons? But rather I mean angels, mal'ache. Vehodash and od Elohim lebaddo, because there is only one God. Fine, leave that on the side. He's just coming to show you that obviously God has no son, there's no Holy Spirit type of thing. The Trinity obviously is false. הרי לך מפורש, דאמונת אב בן היא כפירה באחדות הבורא. So even though he's trying to side with an opinion showing there's a certain monotheism over here to Christianity of our day, this whole concept of father and son, okay, talking about God having a son, is kefira, okay? It's heresy in God. It's either there's God, there's a Borei, there's a creator, and the creator has to be by himself, or there's nothing. And because if you have any sort of feeling that there's another person working together with God, or God has some sort of son, this is heresy in the uniqueness of Borei Olam. ועיין בפתחי תשובה ביורי עاصم מופמים זין סעיף קטן ביד סברת רוב הפוסקים היא דגם שאר אומות מוזהרים על אמונת השיתוף. And if you look at even most other nations, they are also warned against having this concept of thinking God shares power with anybody else. ויש סייעם עוד מהמאמר הנזכרת. ואם כן הנוסרים של זה הזמן אף שלעניין אבידתם וגזילתם וחיוסי אין להם דין עובד כוכבים ומזלות כלל, רק הם כמו ישמעאלים גמורים המאמינים באל אחד, ושמש עבודה זרה שיש באמונתם משתי בערב וסורתו כנזכרת הם רק מנהג אבותיהם בידיהם. Because the Christians of nowadays don't really have the same belief system as Christians of old. Yes, their religion is based upon this concept of Yeshu being the Son of God, but they don't. If you ask them, who do they believe in and who do they serve, they'll tell you God. Do you serve more than one God? No, we serve one God only. So even though they have this built into their belief system, they don't technically believe in it, is what he's telling you. But this is a holdover from their forefathers. מכל מקום, לעניין מלבוש כהניהם ומשרתיהם, הווה מלבוש המיוחד לעבודה ודת שיש בו שמש עבודה זרה. But when it comes to the clothing that they're wearing, okay, they're priests and those that, that work together with their priests, okay, this is a certain clothing that is unique for their abodah, for serving in their churches and for their religion, and it has that feeling, that taste, that inkling towards abodah zarah. Ve'asur liYisrael lilbosh kamuhu, and therefore becomes asur for Israel, for a Jew, to dress the same way. כמו שכתב מרן בידיעה סימן קוף עין ה' סעיף א' וזה שונו. What does Maran write in Shulchan Aruch? אין הולכים בחוקות העקום ולא ילבש מלבוש המיוחד להם. You don't go in the way of the goyim, and you don't wear clothing that is unique to them. Unique to them. What in their service has to be, okay? Because otherwise, there's no problem. Anybody can wear anything. Vehu me Harambam, and this comes from Harambam. Harambam in Huqqot Hagoyim in Perek Yud Aleph, Halacha Aleph, it says the same thing. ומה שחלקו הפוסקים בדבריו, כמו שכתב בכסף משנה ורבנו בית יוסף שם, הוא מה שכתב רבנו הרמה שם בהגהה ולשונו, וכל זה אינו אמור אלא בדבר שנהגו בו העקום לשם פריסות. So Muram, Rabbi Moshe Israelish, says this when there's something doing for piriusut. Okay, or davar shenahagu leminhag ulhok ve'en ta'am b'davar, but something that they do as a minhag or as a law for them, and that has no meaning. So then we have to be concerned that there is something that goes back to the ways of their forefathers of Abodah Zara. And that's something that we have to be concerned with. So far what we're looking at, and this is right now I'm pointing myself at Solomon, who was concerned because this is a moot point. It's not so far a moot point because we're looking at it as how do we view Goyim, how do we see what they do, and if it's something that we can do. We're looking at the Gemara, we're looking at Maran, we're looking at Harambam, and so forth. For the most part, everything seems to be going in one direction. So now let's get back to the clothing. והנה, מלבוש זה של כהני הנוצרים ומשרתי דתם הוא מיוחד להם דווקא. Right? They have this special clothing that they wear, and it's only for them. You don't see anybody else doing it. וחוק ומנהג עליהם. And this is a statute and a custom to them. שלא ישנו אותו מתמונתו ושחרותו. And they don't change it whatsoever. You don't see a priest wearing different clothing. A priest wears a priest's clothing. A father wears a father's clothing. The bishop wears the bishop's clothing. Cardinal wears the cardinal clothing. The pope wears the pope's clothing. They all have certain costumes, certain garb that they wear when performing their functions. And this is considered ancient clothing by them. And we know it especially through the Vatican. You could see in their museum, they'll show you the different types of special clothing that they've had already for centuries. You'll see at any sort of ceremony, you'll see all these guys getting dressed up in certain ceremonial clothing that they wear generation to generation and from pope to pope. And this obviously goes back to the days of Abdei Elidim, when they were actually worshiping all different types of pagan idols. Because if you go to China, okay, Uberes Hodu, or you go to India, Sha'adain Abodah Zara Binehem, okay, we know the Chinese and the Hindus, they still have Abodah Zara. כך היא תמונת מלבוש כהניה ומשרתיה. We know they also have similar clothing that is worn by people who are in charge of performing services for their deities. כאשר ספר לי הרב שלוחת רבנן מספד תיבנה ותכהן בנה בימין מן הלא הוא כבוד מורה הרב שלמה אחנה ישמעו סרו וגואלו. So there was a rabbi from Safed by the name of Shlomo Hanna who traveled to Meknes, Morocco, obviously over here, or to maybe to Tlemcen, Algiers, and he met Rabbi Yosef Mesas, and he told him what he saw himself in China and in India. And this is what they do. שהיה שם בארצות הנזכרות, ועיניו ראו ולא זר, and he saw firsthand, not that he heard from somebody else. וחוק השחרות הוא מחוקי הכומרים עובדי עבודה זרה הקדמונים. And this whole concept of being dressed in black is something that goes back to the priests of old for עבודה זרה. ולכן נקראו בשם כומרים. Okay, and that's why they're called kumarim, milashon shahrut. Okay, komer and shahrut, komer, the priest, shahrut, from black, they're related. Kemosh katub b'sefer Osar Yisrael, od kaf. Okay, Osar Yisrael is a 5-volume Hebrew encyclopedia written by a Jacob Davidson, if I'm not mistaken, here in the Lower East Side of New York, 1913. Okay, you can look it up. It's very, very famous. And it's been reprinted a number of times. A lot of interesting things over there. And he writes, Kemar, okay, Kemar, Shigatab, Vidishono, Viyotenechon, Shehora'at Kamar, Ki Shahor, Al Shem Habigadim, Hashahorim, Shayu, Kuhane Ha'eli, Lubshim, Be'et Abodatam. Okay, Kemar, like bitter. Their clothing was bitter. When a person is bitter, they are black. Their heart is black. They feel black. They go into a state of mourning. They put black ash on them. And so this komarim comes from the kemar, which is black. Okay, our skin got blackened by the oven itself. Okay, from echa. Okay, שאמרו במדרש, כמו תנור שלא הוסק כל צלחיו שכותליו שחורים. When an oven doesn't burn enough, okay, what happens is it fills up with smoke and all the inner walls of the oven become black. If you try to cook something in it, okay, if you put a piece of bread to bake in it, it turns black instead of coming out white. You usually put bread in a hot, dough in a hot oven, the right temperature of heat, it comes out white. Okay, it'll come out a little toasty, but it's white. If you put it in an oven that's not heated to the right temperature, what happens is the walls got all black with soot, and this bread comes out and it's all black. You can't eat it. And this is, okay, okay, whether you're putting in something into a black, dirty oven. איסור חמור דאורייתא לישראל ללבוש כמוהו בתמונתו ושחרותו. So now, Rabbi Mesas is coming on much heavier, much stronger, and he's telling you that such clothing, such dress, asur hamur, okay, strictly forbidden. And a strong forbidden, and he's telling you this is asur deoraita. Okay, this is not something that a banan. Saying the oraita, he's raising it to the highest level for a Jew to wear something that looks exactly like the clothing of these priests, the same style, the same cut, the same color, the same everything. And all the more so that you're going to come to stand in the knees to pray before Melech Melchei Melachim, to do something that's supposed to be kadosh, and you're bringing it down to a level of Abodah Zara. You can't do that. דבשלמה מלבוש הנהוג אצל כל הנוצרים דהיינו מלבוש אירופי אין בו שום סד איסור כלל. Now, if you want to get dressed like every person in Europe, okay, and wear European clothing, a nice suit, double-breasted, with a vest, with a tie, with a hat, okay, everybody gets dressed like that. The average person walking down the street, wears like that. That's fine. There's no problem. This is not clothing that you could say because this is not a hok of these goyim to get dressed this way to serve their God. Rather, this is the way everybody gets dressed to look nice. Okay, so that is no isur. And even if you want to wear a black suit, no problem. Because it has not been set aside, as being considered as something that is only worn by religious functionaries. This is popular clothing. This is what everybody wears. And whether you're rich or poor, whether you're religious or an atheist, everybody wears the same thing. So no problem. No problem whatsoever. كموش كتاب كيس بمشنيف ربنا وبيت يوسف بيولد عاشام عين شام بخيم ملبوش ساريه الصباح. Okay, now let's say you're wearing an army uniform. You could tell who's a general, who's a colonel, who's an admiral. You could tell each person by what they're wearing. Or somebody who's wearing, a top hat and tails, he's telling you. Okay, this is considered something elegant. Very nice. Person of honor wears that type of clothing. And bikulam shum isur. None of these types of clothing that I've mentioned, no matter, even if they're all black, there's no asur, no isur. It's not forbidden. Because they are not worn specifically by religious functionaries to perform religious services. But this clothing now of the rabbis and the Hazzanim of this time, people that are not faithful, who rak الدموت بيتحكوت لحكوت كهاني ذات النصريم شاريتيه بتيتي في الإتام. Don't fool yourself. These people are just trying to copy the goyim, plain and simple. لليخ بحكوتهم بالعصوت كمعاسهم, to follow the ways of the Nosrim. بليشوم إخريح بناكل. And nothing comes out of it. Just you look like another priest. And you end up brushing away the words of the Hachamim. And Adam Haute Velolo. Reform. שמנהג זה נתייסד בגרמניה מתקופת מנדלסון על ידי רבני הרפורם שקלקלו את הדת. And back to the same Mosseri Israel, that 5-volume encyclopedia that I mentioned. He writes under the heading Reform that this is something that started in Germany by Mendelssohn to, by heading the Reform movement to copy the Christian priests. And they did it strictly to find favor in the eyes of the goyim, because they would invite the goyim to come to the synagogues, and they could see, here we also get dressed like you, we want to be like you, we want you to respect us the same way you respect your priests. And from there, one after another, more and more troubles befell the Reform movement, the Reform synagogues. And from there, the minhag spread out to all the cities in Europe, Africa, and to the cities of Africa. And when I was in Gibraltar, בשנת טרף, in 1920, הגידו לי שהרבה סעק על זה הרב גאון כבוד מורנו הרב משה בן נעים. Because they told me when I got there in 1920 to Gibraltar that when this custom showed up, one of the main rabbis over there in Gibraltar, Hacham Moshe ben Naim, screamed about it a lot. V'gam harab gaon kibod moren harab Nisim Danon, and also Rabbi Nisim Danon, that was a rabbi, very important rabbi in Yerushalayim, before World War I. B'hiyoto shluchad Rabbanan po, and he was visiting from Yerushalayim, go and collect funds, obviously. Apparently, שהרבה רבנים וגאונים מיחו מחאות גדולות על זה בחרמות גדולות. And many rabbis came out against this, and they made different types of exiles, if you will, against it. But unfortunately, the Hafshiyot Hador, the freedom, the liberty, okay? Basically, people said, no, Rabbi, sorry, times have changed. We're going to do what we want. We really don't care. We want to get dressed this way. And they ended up winning out against the rabbis. The rabbis couldn't beat them. עוד שמעתי מפי אחד קדוש הגאון המפורסם כבוד מורנו הרב שלמה אבן דנן זכותו יגן עלינו אמן. Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Danan was a very, very famous, and if you want to call him a holy rabbi, he was very, very well respected by everybody, and he was in the city of Fez. And he says, Rabbi Mesas is telling us that he heard that Rabbi Ibn Danan was asked by a honorable person that not only can't these people get dressed in these get-ups of the priests, if they're up there hazaning, you cannot even answer amen to them. Because you can't perform one religion while looking like another religion that you're trying to copy. It doesn't work. So your tefillah is also automatically becomes pasul, and you can't answer amen to it. These people are unworthy to become that messenger, to be that go-between between Am Yisrael, the people in the Kahal, and Borei Olam. ולא עוד, אלא שדבר זה הוסיף שנאה בלב הכנסייה הנוצרית וכהניה ומשרתיה והרבה רציחות יעשו מזה ברוסיה ואקפיה כידוע בעיתונים. He goes, even though the reform movement thought they were doing the right thing, you know, what happened in the other side of the world, if you move to Russia, the Russians saw, oh, you're trying to copy us? You think you like us? Well, we're going to kill you because we don't like that you're copying us. And so they end up having a lot more pogroms in Russia because of this type of dress that started to take over the synagogues. Arum, okay, not meaning naked, but arum meaning super wise. Okay? The בזמן הקודם היו גוזרים על היהודים לשאת על בגדיהם אותות קלון, ועתה שעיניהם ראו שהיהודים לובשים כקומריהם משרתי דתם, איך להתחמש להם על זה. He goes, you lowly Jews, you know, that's the way the Russians would speak to them, you know, you're supposed to be dressed, you know, let's say with ugly clothing, with dirty clothing, with a sign on your clothing to distinguish you so we know that you're, you know, that you're just Jews, and now you're trying to dress up like our most holy people, like our priests. We're going to kill you now for this. And obviously we should never try to do anything that's going to try to awaken the wrath of those around us, especially something that itself is asur. The problem is that the leaders of the community, okay, are devoid of Torah. Okay, they were brought up on a new type of culture. This culture of the school, not the culture of what you call the Torah. ורבניהם וחזניהם כיוסי בהם שכולם מתאימות לדחקות על מנהגי הגויים שכניהם. And now these new guys that are coming up among their ranks to become their rabbis and their hazanim, okay, they're no better than the punk off the street, even, if you will. Not that he's using those words, but I'm saying that, you know, and they're just trying to copy the people that they think everybody looks up to. They think people will then respect them. Okay, everything's going to flip on you. He goes, as it is, they don't like us. But when you try to throw off your religion to copy them and you think they don't like you more, they end up hating you more because they see that obviously you don't care about your religion and they consider now you're mocking theirs. Generally, when you're following your own religion, you're leaving them alone, they'll leave you alone far more than when you try to be like them. ברזמניה יוכיח כמו שכתב בירושלמי סנהדרין פרק ג' להלכה ה' וזה שונו רבה ברזמינה הוא מחייט גבי חל ברנש ברומי ואיתי לב עשה נבלה אמר לי אקול אמר לי לתנה אקי אמר לי אקול דאו כן אנה קטיל לך אמר לי אין בעיד מקטול כתול דלית אנה אקי בעשה נבלה אמר לי من مدى لخاد إلو أخذت هفينا قتلين لك يهودي أرماي I kind of show no عين شام. They're telling you a story in the Gemara that this guy, was basically came up to a guy. He wasn't really looking like a Jew. Yeah, take this piece of meat and eat it. No, I'm not going to eat it. No, you're going to eat it. No, I'm not going to eat it. No, I don't care. I don't eat. This is nibela. I'm not going to eat it. He goes, I don't care what you want to call it. You're still going to eat it. Back and forth, they're fighting with you. And he said, no, I'm a Jew. You want to kill me? Kill me, I'm a Jew. He goes, well, you're a Jew. We're going to kill you either way. But if you ate it, we would have killed you faster, because we would see that you're a phony Jew. ועיין עוד בשמות רבה סוף פרשת עין ב' ועוד כמה מעשיות שמעו רבינו בזה וכל אוהב באמת ידע ויבין את זאת. Well, anytime you try to, push your Judaism to the side, they know it, they feel it, they smell it, and they come out after you even more. זהו הנראה לכוס דעתי ברור. And then he's just closing off the thing. He's saying, this is my opinion. ולפני אלוהי קדם מעונה אשפוך שיחה וטחינה להשיב שופטינו כבראשונה ויועצינו כבתחילה במי עדנה להקים רבנים וחזנים על פי עדות השם נאמנה. We have to bring up חזנים and חכמים the way they used to be, not according to the new modern way. לא על פי ריקים כעדנה, not the emptiness of nowadays time. הבוחרים רק את מינם בכוונה ואז תרבה הדעת בכל העם מקומו יבוא שלום אחיך השעיר. So bottom line is, he's trying to tell you that there are laws of the Huqqot Hagoyim lo telechu, and we have to know when to apply them and when they're applied and when they're not applied. And unfortunately, people think we could just do whatever we want anytime we want. Everything has to be looked into in a certain way, and it's not we could find a way out. We're not looking for a way out. We have the Torah. The Torah is there to guide us, to lead us, and and especially when it comes to tefillah, tefillah has a certain kedusha, and because of the kedusha, even the attire has to be kedusha. Now, Solomon left this; he wasn't interested in the topic, but the pictures he showed are not at all what Chacham Yosef Mesas was referring to. It's a very, very different type of attire. And we've all seen pictures of priests dressed in black. We know what they look like, and it's very, very distinct. So if you have a Hazzan that's dressed in a similar fashion, but it's not the same, and you could tell it's different, then there's not a problem. Also, if it's not black, automatically it's considered different. It's not the same. But when you come and you imitate them exactly, the same cut of fabric that falls on the body the same way, with the same design, with the same exact coloring, then you're only imitating them, and that's what's haram. But if you're doing something, you want to make something that's unique now for the Jewish service, okay, it may have similarities to what the Goyim are doing, but it's not exactly the same. That would not be Asur. That is what we're dealing with right now. I'd love to hear some feedback, and we'll see where we go from there. Anybody? Come on, Bill DeRicci, you've been in Turkey. You see how the Hazanim get dressed?
It's funny. I was thinking that it's really different than what the Hazanim dress like over here. They wear, every Shabbat, they're wearing white head to toe. And I always thought it was reminiscent of like a different religion, when I was a kid going there. But I mean, I find it interesting that we don't have those sort of garbs here at all. I've never seen it. Maybe in Share Sion once on the holidays, I might have seen in the dome the Hazanim wearing all white. Otherwise, I haven't seen it here.
Right. So white is definitely the preferred color for Yamim Noraim. Okay. The question is, what about during the rest of the year? What are they wearing? Are they wearing all black? Let's put it this way: the hats that the Hazanim wear definitely are not like the hats, or whatever headwear that any of the priests wear. So automatically, by that, you could tell that they are not imitating uh, the religious functionaries of the church. As far as the robes are concerned, the robes become a lot more similar. But even those, you could tell that there's a distinct look to a Muslim cleric, a Christian cleric, a Jewish cleric. I think there are definitely differences. Okay. And pictures that Solomon sent, Solomon was sending me pictures of your typical robes that were worn in the street, not, what a religious functionary would wear, but what people in the 1920s in Yerushalayim would generally wear, walking in the street. You would see everybody wearing similar type of cloaks. So there was nothing unique about that would fit into the discussion or the teshuvah that we were reading.
How about the uniform of the chief rabbi, the Hacham Bashi? I always thought it looked kind of like the Greek Orthodox.
It definitely has similarity to the cloaks of the Greek Orthodox. Yes, there's no
Like
question that
Armenian.
it has a certain similarity. There are differences there as well, especially when you come to the hat, based upon the way this, if you want to call this, the scalloped type of look on the side is a little bit different. Sometimes the what do you call the height of the hat or the flatness of the hat is somewhat different as well. And there were differences from country to country, from city to city. They had to look distinct as a religious functionary, especially if they were the chief rabbi. Then they were expected to dress a certain way because they would be invited, if you will, from the heads of states to certain times come and attend certain religious functions, and they had to have the chief representative of all major religions there. So they had to have something that was distinguished looking as well. It could look similar but not the same.
Right. So something that was in the Ottoman fashion, but not, but also distinctive.
Mm-hmm. And even you would see from time to time differences from Hacham to Hacham, and and even over the course of, let's say, one century to the next century, you may see some differences as well. Or as, let's say, within the Palachi family of Hachamim, you would see a similarity in their clothing, whereas in the Hazzan family, you would see their clothing also looked a little bit different. People had certain distinctions, but enough of a distinction that the average person would be able to tell if he's walking down the street that this guy is not Christian, he's Jewish.
Right.
I think Mark had a question.
So we talked about the priest mainly, and the issue, I guess, stemmed from more about with Christianity, whether it's Abodah Zara or not. What about a Muslim cleric or imam? Could we extrapolate from this to Shuvah with the halakha would be?
So, based upon what we know, they were never viewed as Abodah Zara by Harambam or by any of our Sephardic Rishonim or Aharonim. Once they're not Abodah Zara, you really don't have much of a question, at least as far as I can tell. Nor do you have, the same ashiri that we looked at to put your finger on or maran, because neither case would really actually fit in with a non-Obed Abodah Zara, because in such a case you wouldn't even have the shemis Abodah Zara. So what would you harp yourself on and say, okay, let's look at this at the sheikh and what's he doing? And the sheikh generally didn't, for the most part, didn't have a special type of clothing. Okay, his clothing wasn't really different than others. You would only have a person who made Hajj, okay? He made his Aliyah Regel to Mecca, okay? He would, if he waited 3 times, they would add a certain distinction to his clothing at times. And those that were descendants of Muhammad, they would wear green, okay? To show that they are from that, what do you call it, if you want to call it, loyal religious family. But other than that, there was nothing that I'm familiar with that would set apart the clothing of a imam, if you will, that's going up into, into the mosque to recite the adhan, that he looks different than any other guy who walked in, maybe even his student.
Well, he made the point that many Hachamim didn't say was Abodah Zara Christianity. So, and he criticized it mainly in a big way in terms of copying the way they dress for their Abodah, right?
For their Abodah, because of the Abodah Zara. He was very, very clear to keep repeating the concept of the Shetiv Arab that had the the full body image of Yeshu. He said it more than once. Okay, and you don't have any sort of idolatrous item when it comes to a mosque. Nothing whatsoever. They don't even have pictures. They just and even for design, they'll only create artwork that's based upon geometric shapes to avoid any sort of Abodah Zara. If anything, they're more mahmir with that than we are. So I don't see that there could be a problem over there. Unless, I'm missing something, let me know. Nisim's smiling over there. Nisim, what do you want to have to say? You're on mute. Okay, put him on. What about the picture? I don't hear you.
Which rabbi is this?
Which rabbi is this? Doesn't look like, to me, it doesn't look like a rabbi, but it could be anybody.
Nah, it's a sheik.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a rabbi.
Looked like a rabbi to me when I first walked in.
Really? No, I don't see it. Okay, what's his name? Where's he from?
The Shiite, I guess, clerk who gave a speech in Evid Wen. Yeah, I forgot his name. A pro-Israel Shiite.
Mm-hmm. So maybe he got dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is what we're looking at. Now let's.
So what about the communities that do? You started off saying some communities do actually have those.
So the question is,
what communities are those?
The question is, are there communities today that still have Hachamim and Hazzanim that are dressed in such a fashion? Okay. I personally don't know. I haven't looked to see what's going on. The way the world has turned, I think we're seeing less and less of these types of outfits in Jewish communities. And maybe in the Spanish Portuguese communities in London, maybe there's still something like that going on. But even them, I think they still dress differently. It's it's distinct enough that you know that it's not Christian. Here in the United States, we don't really see such a thing. Am I correct? Am I incorrect? Okay, so I think that's really where it is. Now, let's just digress for a moment and let's talk about Thanksgiving. Is Thanksgiving a problem because of Huqqotehim lo telechu. Is there something unique and distinct about Thanksgiving that makes it a holiday of the Nosrim that we cannot copy and do? Based upon anything I've seen and I've read, it doesn't seem like such a holiday. It was initially, it was probably based upon a feast, or rather a festivity that would be similar to Hag Sukkot, but Hag Sukkot not in the sense of people sitting in booths, in the sense of Hag HaAsif, the time of gathering. Okay, you're gathering everything up, and you're thankful for the bounty that you have. You're thankful for you've been able to weather through, the season and have enough food to carry you through the harsh winter that's coming, and you're giving thanks to Borei Olam for it. And based upon whatever sort of written documents and speeches that we have, let's say from George Washington, he's telling the people, go to your houses of worship and thank your Lord for everything that you have. Thank him for the land that you're in. Thank him for the, for the land, for the liberty, for the freedom, what have you. He doesn't tell you specifically to go to church. He tells you your house of worship to, thank your God for it. We know that obviously George Washington was very close with Jewish people, specifically with Haim Solomon, for helping finance the revolution. He kept obviously some sort of distinction, maybe in respect to that, maybe for reasons of separation of church and state. It could be anything at all. The point is, there was nothing that would point to it being something having to do with Christian religion. Even if you want to go back and say that when people first landed on these shores and they found the Native American Indians here, and they were giving the Native American Indians were having a feast based upon whatever they've been able to piece together. That was June, July, and nowhere near October, November, and they were doing it basically thanking their gods, if you will, for getting them through a harsh winter and now enjoying the land in the milder months on the warmer temperatures. So we're not even doing it that time of the year. We're not doing, any sort of ritual that the Indians that were Abodah Zara were doing. So it has nothing to do with that either. So I don't see a connection that would, say as Am Yisrael, as people that are serving Borei Olam, people that are following the Torah, any reason not to observe Thanksgiving. And if anybody here sees something else, or knows historically more about it, I'd like to know. Anybody?
How about Hallel? Is that a step too far? Is that now you're taking something that might have roots in a different religion? Even if we're changing the whole idea. But now let's say you wanted to do Hallel, would that be too much?
Well, definitely too much. So even if you want to look at George Washington is telling you, go to your house of worship and say supplications to Borei Olam. Supplications is not Hallel, it's Anna. Okay?
Right. So what about incorporating anything into the prayer? Like, should we listen to George Washington?
We obviously we have Mizmor LeTorah. We're saying it every day.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not incorporating it into the prayer because as Am Yisrael, we have this sense of hakarat hatov, okay, of gratitude, and we thank Borei Olam on a regular basis. In the Amidah, 3 times a day, hatov shemcha uchana'e lehodot. Okay, we are trained from our youth to realize all the good that we have and to thank Borei Olam for it. Now, we may not always do it. You know, we may be in a rush now of prayers. So Thanksgiving, as most people are off from work, people can spend a couple of extra minutes having kavanah, you know, or because it's not one of our regular religious holidays with its ritual, we can at the table, you know, recite the Mizmor LeTodah, or have everybody go around the table and say what they're grateful for. Not that we're never grateful, you know, the rest of the year, which we truly are, but it's a way to awaken that in us for it to hopefully carry through the rest of the year, like we're supposed to do, like we said, based upon Mizmor LeTodah and on the Berachah and the Amidah Tov Shmecha Chana Ele Hodot. So there's no problem over there as far as I see. I think everything about it goes hand in hand with, you know, our Torah and our Tefillah.
Right.
I wouldn't be adding anything to the prayer, honestly. I wouldn't be changing the prayer. Prayer
It's also
stands the
nice.
way it is.
It's actually a nice idea that you live in a country that, you know, has a day that they say you should thank God for what you have. It's like, you know, you don't have countries like that. I don't know.
No.
I don't know holidays of other cultures, but outside of a non-religious country in Europe, where God is, you know, for the most part, was devoid, I guess, in the 20th century,
Right.
the 21st century, you had our country, which it's for the most part is still very God-fearing or belief in God, and they're thanking God for what they have.
Well,
Changing now
at
a little
least
bit,
part of the
but
population.
part of the population. It is changing now. Government
Yeah.
officials moving it a different way, but the founding fathers, at least, they set it up.
Mm-hmm. No, the
So
founding fathers were definitely in touch with God and very much in touch with the Tanakh. You know, and they tried to establish a lot, you know, based upon that. They saw themselves as Am Yisrael, you know, and Yesiat Mitzrayim. They saw themselves as, okay, we got away from the oppression of Europe. They saw the kings of Europe as being each one as a par'ah, and we got away and we're free now and we're starting our land, you know, based upon the morals and the ideas that God has given Am Yisrael at Har Sinai. And much of what they did in this country was based upon that. Okay.
so you view it as more of a patriotic holiday that has religious meaning, but that isn't necessarily connected to anything pagan or Christian.
Right. It's not connected to any one religion.
Right.
Right. It's a nationalistic holiday, but it's completely based upon the concept of thanking God for everything that you have in this country that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
And just as
Yeah.
a side point, I don't know that the idea of God was a religious concept. Maybe the worship is, but the idea of God was always a given up until, you know, recent times.
And as such, the money, the dollar bills and say on it, in God we trust.
Right.
They
It was a
had
given.
Imunah. People were definitely, in touch on a much more normal level with the idea of God as part of your life. The world is different today than it was when the United States was established. Talking about close to 250 years ago already.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it.
All right. Hazak Baruch. Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a happy Thanksgiving. And God willing, over the course of the week, David Batesh will help get these books out, and we'll have a class on the Siddur next week, God willing. Okay?
Good night. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you. Good
Night.
night.
Have a
Good
great
night,
evening.
Mark. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
And